ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय।
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 नारायणं नमस्कृत्यं
नारायणं नमस्कृत्यं
नरं चैव नरोत्तमं
नरं चैव नरोत्तमं
देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं
देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं
ततो जयमुदीरयेत्।
ततो जयमुदीरयेत्।
नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु
नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु
नित्यं भागवत सेवया
नित्यं भागवत सेवया
भगवती उत्तमश्लोके
भगवती उत्तमश्लोके
भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी।
भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी।
Reading from Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 15, titled The Yoga of the Supreme Person or Purushottam Yoga, as it is mentioned in other languages. In English, it is called the Yoga of the Supreme Person. And today we are going to discuss verse number 7. Mamavangsho jivaloke
लोके
jivabhuta sanatana
जीवभूतः सनातनः
manasastandriyani
मनः षष्ठानीन्द्रियाणि
prakriti karshati
प्रकृतिस्थानि कर्षति
mamaivangsho jivaloke
मामैवंस जीवो लोके
jivabhuta sanatana
जीवभूतः सनातनः
manasastandriyani
मनः षष्ठानीन्द्रियाणि
prakriti karshati
प्रकृतिस्थानि कर्षति
mamaivangsho jivaloke jivabhuta sanatana mama sastandriyani prakriti karshati.
તમને આવડે છે?
Any Prabhuji or Mataji would like to lead?
હરે કૃષ્ણ પ્રભુજી.
Yes, Mataji, go ahead.
મામવંશો જીવલોકે
Mamavansho jivaloke
જીવભૂતઃ સનાતનઃ
jivabhuta sanatana
मनः षष्ठानि इन्द्रियाणि
mama sastani indriyani
प्रकृतिस्थानि कर्षति
prakriti karshati.
ममैवांस जीवो लोके
Mamaivangsho jivaloke
जीवभूतः सनातनः
jivabhuta sanatana
मनः षष्ठानि इन्द्रियाणि
mama sastandriyani
प्रकृतिस्थानि कर्षति
prakriti karshati.
ममैभमस्जिवलोके
Mamaivanso jivaloke
जीवभूत सनातनः
jivabhuta sanatana
मनः संस्थानि इन्द्रियाणि
manasastani indriyani
प्रकृति स्थानि
prakriti karshati. Thank you very much. Word by word meaning. Mama, my.
मम माय
Eva, certainly.
एव certainly
Amsa, fragmented particle.
अंशः fragmental
particles
Jivaloke, in the world of conditional life.
जीवलोके in the world of conditional life
Jivabhuta,
जीवभूतः
the conditioned living entity.
the condition
conditioned living entity
Sanatana, eternal.
सनातनः eternal
Mana, with the mind.
मनः with the mind
Sasthani, the six.
षष्ठानि the six
Indriyani, senses.
indriyani the senses
Prakriti in material nature.
Prakriti in material nature.
Material nature.
Sthani situated.
Sthani
Sthani
situated.
situated.
Karshati is struggling hard.
Kashrati is struggling hard.
hard.
Translation by His Divine Grace is Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki jai.
Okay.
The living entities
The living entities
The living entities
in this conditioned world are
In this
in this
condition,
conditioned world,
world are
my eternal fragmental parts.
my
my
eternal
eternal
fragmental parts,
parts.
Due to conditioned life,
due to
due to
condition,
conditioned life,
life,
they are struggling very hard
they are
They are
struggling very hard
very hard.
with the six senses,
with
with
the
the
With
six
the
senses,
six senses,
which include the mind.
which
which include the mind.
Any Prabhuji or Mataji would like to read this page of the purport?
In this verse, the identity of the living being is clearly given. The living entity is the fragmental part and parcel of the Supreme Lord eternally. It is not that he assumes individuality in his conditional life and in his liberated state becomes one with the Supreme Lord. He is eternally fragmented. It is clearly said, Sanatana. According to the Vedic version, the Supreme Lord manifests and expands himself in innumerable expansions, of which the primary expansions are called the Vishnu Tattva and the secondary expansions are called the living entities. In other words, the Vishnu Tattva is the personal expansion and the living entities are the separated expansions. By his personal expansion, he is manifested in various forms like Lord Ram, Nrsimhadev, Vishnumurti, and all the predominating deities in the Vaikuntha planets. The separated expansions, the living entities, are eternally servitors. The personal expansions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the individual identities of the Godhead, are always present. Similarly, the separated expansions of the living entities have their identities. As fragmental parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, the living entities are also fragmental portions of his qualities, of which independence is one. Every living entity, as an individual soul, has its personal individuality and a minute form of independence. By misuse of that independence, one becomes a conditioned soul, and by proper use of independence, he is always liberated. In either case, he is qualitatively eternal as the Supreme Lord is.
Thank you, Prabhu. Anybody else would like to read this page of the purport?
in his
liberated state, he is freed from this material condition and he is under the engagement of transcendental service unto the Lord. In his conditioned life, he is dominated by the material modes of nature and he forgets the transcendental loving service of the Lord. As a result, he has to struggle very hard to maintain his existence in the material world. Prabhuji, shall I read the next one? Or
Yes. What is displayed on the screen? Yeah, go ahead, Prabhu.
the living entities, not only human beings and the cats and dogs, but even the greater controllers of the material world, Brahma, Lord Shiva, and even Vishnu, are all parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord. They are all eternal, not temporary manifestation. Word Karsati, struggling or grappling hard, is very significant. The conditioned soul is bound up as though shackled by iron chains. He is bound up by the false ego, and the mind is the chief agent which is driving him in this material existence. When the mind is in the mode of goodness, his activities are good. When the mind is in the mode of passion, his activities are troublesome. And when the mind is in the mode of ignorance, he travels in the lower spaces of life. It is clear, however, in this verse that the conditioned soul is covered by the material body with the mind and the senses. And when he is liberated, this material covering perishes, but his spiritual body manifests itself in its individual capacity.
Thank you, Prabhu. Anybody else would like to read this page?
the following. Go ahead, Mataji.
Yes, you can go, no problem.
Oh, no problem.
The following information is there in the Madhyandi Nayana Stuti. Sava Isha Brahma Nisha Idam Sarvam Martyam Atishriya Brahma Vishamadaya Brahmana Pashyati Brahmana Shranoti Brahmana Eva Dama Sarvam Anubhavati. It is stated here that when a living entity gives up this material embodiment and it enter into the spiritual world, he reviews his spiritual body, and in his spiritual body he can see the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face. He can hear and speak to him face to face, and he can understand the Supreme Personality as he is. In Smriti, also it is understood that in the spiritual planet, everyone lives in bodies featured like the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As far as bodily construction in, construction in concert, there is no difference between the part and parcel living entity and the expansion of Vishnu Murti. In other words, at liberation, the living entity get a spiritual body by the grace of Supreme Personality of Godhead. The word Mamaivam Saha, fragmental parts and parcel of the Supreme Lord, is also very significant. The fragmental portion of the Supreme Lord is not like some material broken part. We have already understood in the second chapter that the spirit cannot be cut into pieces.
Thank you, Bharati.
These
Anybody else would like to read this page?
This fragment is not materially conceived. It is not like matter, which can be cut into pieces and joined together again. That conception is not applicable here because the Sanskrit word sanatana, sanatana, eternal, is used. The fragmental portion is eternal. It is also stated in the beginning of the second chapter that in each and every individual body, the fragmental portion of the Supreme Lord is present. Dehino smino yata deha. That fragmental portion, when liberated from the bodily entanglement, revives its original spiritual body in the spiritual sky, in a spiritual planet, and enjoys association with the Supreme Lord. It is, however, understood here that the living entity, being the fragmental part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, is qualitatively one with the Lord, just as the parts and parcel of the gold are also gold.
Thank you very much, everyone. Let's all chant together. अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुर्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरुवैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणरघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादां सहगणललिता श्रीविशाखावितंश्च हे कृष्ण करुणा सिन्धु दीनबन्धु जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिकान्त राधाकान्त नमस्तुते तप्तकाञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरि वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवास आदि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे नीलाचल निवासाय नित्याय परमात्मने बलभद्र सुभद्राभ्य जगन्नाथाय ते नमः. So thank you so much for joining this Sangha on the first Sangha of 2023. A beautiful new year is upon us, and a beautiful chapter. And this verse is one of the most quoted verse where the spiritual science is totally packed, power packed. So what you read through Srila Prabhupada's purport, and if you have understood that, and we're going to go deep into that, and if you really meditate on what Krishna is saying, you'll realize the entire science of spirituality is embedded in that. So here Krishna is saying, Mamavangsha Jiva Loke. That means the jivas, like we, the spirit souls, what we talked about is we are the marginal energy of the Lord. The Lord is Sachitanand, and then, so that means he is, eternal, and then there is the spiritual world where he resides, but he expands as Lord Balram, and his first quadruple expansion is Karnadakshay Vishnu, and then Garvadakshay Vishnu, and then Hiradakshay Vishnu, where he is localized in our hearts, in every jiva, in all the 8.4 million species as Paramatma, and he's looking at us. So here Krishna is reiterating that by saying Mama Vangsha Jiva Loka. So all the jivas like Hiradakshay Vishnu is in our heart as Paramatma. So we are part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which Krishna is saying in the first line. And then he's saying Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. So that means all these jivas, like all of us, we are eternal actually. We are, so this is where we have to understood little closely that we have all the qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But that is qualitatively, but quantitatively, we are infinitesimal. So that means we are insignificant. So here Krishna is saying Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. That means we are very much part and parcel of whom? Sanatana, eternal. And so we have the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and from whom we all have come through the process which spoke in various different verses before. But the difference is essentially, Krishna is saying Manasastandriyani. We all have heard about 5 senses, right? And we have a movie called Sixth Sense, right? So Krishna is saying Manasastandriyani. The sixth sense means the 5 sense, the 5 gross senses. On the top of that, the processing sense, mana, or the mind, which basically makes it sastandriyani. That means there are 6 senses. So Krishna is saying, because of this mana and the 5 senses, the 6 senses together, prakriti sthani karsati, makes us, the jivas, struggle in this material world. So what a beautiful verse. The entire power, entire spiritual science is in here. So let's go deep into it. Srila Prabhupada has put everything into the purport. But just to give a background, because this is a new year and we had so much of breaks. So this is one of the very powerful chapters of Bhagavad Gita. It's mentioned Purushottam Yoga, or the yoga of the Supreme Person. That means Supreme Personality of Godhead, Purna Purushottam, and how to you get unison with the Supreme Personality of Godhead is explained here in this chapter. So chapter 1 to 5, chapter 15, verse 1 to 5, Krishna is focusing on becoming detached from this material world. And then he goes on to discuss, and this 7th verse, which is the second section of this chapter, talks about transmigration and what should be our goal and how we should achieve it. And the section 3, which is verses 12 to 15, Krishna talks about his position as our maintainer. We are constantly being maintained by someone, and he happens to be the Supreme Person. And then the 4th section, where it talks about understanding the Bhagavad Gita, is understanding the Vedas and Vedantas. So you'll hear some people will say, okay, where is Veda, where is Vedanta, and how is that related to Bhagavad Gita? But in these 3 verses, in the 4th section of this chapter, Krishna says, if you have understood Bhagavad Gita, you have understood Vedas in Vedantas, which we're going to go there. And the section 5, also talks about knowing Krishna means knowing everything. Where if you know the whole, you really do not want to know every nook and corner and thereby getting confused. So knowing Krishna means knowing everything. And there in the first verse, Krishna talks about aswatham. That means this material world is a aswastham. That means this is a banyan tree, and this is a reverse banyan tree, where he says that this banyan tree under which the Supreme Personality of Godhead is standing, this material world is a reflection of the spiritual world. So this is the spiritual world, and this is the material world. And because of our desires, the reflection is actually a perverted reflection. So this material world is a perverted reflection, and the root of the perverted reflection is Brahmaji, and the higher devas and devatas are in the more close to the roots. And here you have this human being over here, and then below you have other species, the animals, and then you have the lower species of life who are eating everything, and then this human being is actually struggling between the branches of the tree. And this is how the chapter has started. This is a very profound chapter. So we have to understand that our position is we're going from one branch to another, and it is a very difficult situation. And that is where Krishna takes us to chapter 15, verse 7, where we are now, so that we have the right background. So here Krishna is saying the living being in this world are my eternal part and parcel. And then because of the conditioning, they are struggling hard in this material world with the six senses, which is including the mind. So essentially, we have five senses, five organic senses, where we have the organ, and then we have the senses, where we have the eye, which is seeing, with the tongue, which is tasting, the ears, which is hearing, the nose, which is smelling, and then skin, which is touching. But these five senses are processed by another sense, which Krishna is saying is the sixth sense, and that sixth sense is mind. So mind is processing the seeing. If the mind sees something good, the mind gets attracted, and that attraction can be in the form of goodness, where the mind wants to help. Then if the eye sees something which is very attractive in a passionate way, the mind processes it and tries to have a very different perception. And then if the mind sees something which is uh, attractive in an ignorant sense, then when the eye sees in a very ignorant sense, the mind processes it. So everything with the organic senses and the sixth sense being the mind, you can have a perception of goodness, passion, and ignorance. Likewise, if the tongue tests something which is very pious, like the Krishna Prasad, the mind will always like to eat Krishna Prasad, whether it is the New Year buffet or or any other time when the festivities happen. And the Krishna Prasad is so attractive. Krishna says the mind will never try to eat anything other than that. It will always seek Krishna Prasad. Likewise, if the mind perceives or processes something which is passionate, the mind will try to get attracted. And gradually, if the mind sees something which is ignorant, which is kind of smelly, which is kind of uh, you know sour and whatnot, and the mind tends to go in that direction. Likewise, when the mind hears something which is kirtan or some glories of the Lord or Bhagavad Gita or things like that, your ear get focused in that right sense. But if the ear hears some filmy music and the mind get processed, your nature in terms of how mind hears that perception through ears can be provocative enough to take you in a totally different direction. And likewise, if you hear things which is propaganda, things which kind of brainwashes you, and soon you'll become totally different, like the terrorists, for example. The terrorists are totally brainwashed by hearing, and the mind is processing that. And likewise, smell, skin, they're all examples where when the mind processes them or perceives them or experiences it, it tends to become totally different. So Krishna is talking about this Sada Indriyas, which can, where the mind, if focused in the right sense, can.
ఫుల్లా నువ్వైతే తీసుకుని బిడ్డ అది ఇంకా పడుకుంటే తీసేద్దాం అనుకున్నాను.
So when we have the mind which is processing in certain way, we can perceive things differently, and this differentiation in terms of goodness, passion, ignorance is there. And in that aspect, when you think about when a mom gives some funds to a kid so that the kid can either put it in the piggy bank or tends to use it for his weekly expenses. But once the kids misuse the funds given by mom, then what does mom do? Mom reduces the pocket money. Mom may give little punishment. So Krishna is saying, because the mind is controlling you, if you use the independence from me, because Srila Prabhupada goes on to talk about all of us are independent. We all have individual souls. We can go out anytime from our house. But at the end of the day, we have to serve someone. Either you serve your family by not going out often and staying and doing the prescribed duties. It's all good. But the intent is if you misuse your independence, like the kid which misuses the funds given to her or him by the mom, then it has consequences. So we have to understand that we have this independence. Our mind can drive quite a lot of decision making, but we should not misuse the independence. Otherwise, we would be in trouble. Krishna has given us independence, but the independence, if it's misused, as you saw in the perverted reflection, we may steer down in our subsequent life. We may become unregulated. If Krishna sees that we love unregulation in our life, we can eat anything in our life, then because of our independence, we can do that. But Krishna says, because of that, I can let you drive to a subsequent life where you stay unregulated. So Krishna is very merciful. So depending on our desire to serve or not serve, or lead our life, or drive our mind to lead our life in such a way, we may go up or go down the chain. And this is where we have to understand this supreme science, which Krishna is saying here. So then Krishna is saying, you are part and parcel of myself, but we can stay apart from Krishna. So senses are there to serve someone, right? Whether you serve the government, whether you serve our boss, whether we serve our family, we are bound to serve someone. But if we get the proposition that we should serve the illusory energy of the Lord, where it is bahirmukhi, where it is outbound, where it is apart from Krishna, it has consequences. Or we can stay within the confines of part of Krishna and be serving Krishna. So as if you see the example given here is you're part of a school, right? But if you end up doing activity which is not allowed in the school, you may get punishment. You may get rusticated from the school. You may get they may ask you to drop some classes. You may drop a grade because you're not doing well. And because the person who is supposed to stay regulated in a school and follow the right course of action, because he or she is attracted to the material energy, or getting too much attracted to the movies during school days and miss some classes, then because of the prakriti, because of the nature, because of the material nature, the person is struggling. The person wants to go to a movie in a school, and because he goes to a movie, he bunks some classes, he can't make up for the attendance, and then he goes down. Exactly like that, we can choose to be part of Krishna or become apart from Krishna. So that part and apart are very substantial discussion channels. We have to think as to whether we are bound to serve somebody, but who do we want to serve? So that's something for all of us to ponder in this verse. So we have to recognize our identity, who we are. We are the spirit soul, which cannot be cut, which cannot be burnt. We learned it. Um, and there, when we recognize the identity and you work towards maintaining the identity, we get to a destination. So what is our identity? The identity of us is we are spirit souls. Like if there is a leaf on the tree, as long as the leaf is linked to the tree, the leaf flourishes, the leaf looks green. There will be tremendous amount of wind which is trying to dislodge the leaf from the tree. The leaf is just hanging onto the tree. The leaf becomes successful. The leaf's identity is there as long as the leaf is on the tree. The second point, which is over here, is how we should channelize our activity. So in this case, the leaf is continuing to stay on the tree. There are, hurricanes, there are, breeze, wind, and everything. But as long as the leaf continue to stay on the tree, it has its identity. Soon, the wind wins over, or the leaf tries to get away intentionally, then leaf becomes garbage. The leaf is no more a leaf. It is garbage. So the identity of the leaf is lost by not being part of the whole. So our intent should become part of the whole, and we should attempt to be part of the whole always, so that when the crisis comes, we have enforcements. So Krishna is saying, because of the illusory energy of the Lord, this mind is getting everybody staying there, making their focus go away from the Supreme. And because the focus is going away from the Supreme, the individual is struggling in this material world. And because of the illusory energy, the mind is going haywire. And because of that, this material world is a struggle for everyone. Struggle to go to school in right time, struggle to go to work, because our mind is taking us haywire. And the third thing is, by recognizing our identity, by channelizing our activity properly, which is essentially bhakti for all of us, we can choose our destiny by spiritualizing our destiny, or we can materialize our destiny and go down in the chain. We have talked about 8.4 million species. We have a choice. But what Krishna is saying is, you recognize your identity. Mahavangsha Jiva Loka Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. You're part and parcel of Sanatana, eternal. qualitatively same, quantitatively different. And in this life, channelize our activity, which is nothing but bhakti yoga. I'm sure you all understand after this course that we are in trying our best to stay, and as if you have, when we are in this material world where we are drowning, and when we are drowning, we're sticking to a small stick which is in the edge of a flooded area, and we're trying to stick to it so that we become part and parcel of the whole. If we are part and parcel of the whole, we have the identity. Nothing is going to happen to us. But soon we get detached in this flood, in this example, in this material world, because our mind is not focused, or whatever the case may be, we are in trouble. So we have to spiritual our destiny by going back to Godhead, which is what we all should aspire towards. So the material world will temporarily provide independence, but it's temporary. And that is where, if we are without a mentor in the form of association, in the form of somebody who can really mentor us to get us close to the Supreme, and without the right mentorship, we are going to go towards danger. So how to not go towards danger is something which Krishna is very clearly mentioning here, is who could take you closer to your destiny, which is we're trying to spiritualize. So the spiritual destiny, which Krishna is talking about, by indulging in the action, by channelizing our activity, by recognizing that we are that leaf which is part of the tree, and we should maintain that by working towards that, by channelizing our activity, our spiritual destiny will permanently take us under Krishna and make us depend on Krishna. So here, our intent is we have this independence. We have this false sense of independence, and we go do this, we eat whatever we like, we, indulge in whatever we like. But by doing that, we are going away from the whole. So we should use our independence properly. There are many countries in this world, when they misuse their independence, they are in trouble. I'm not saying this or that, or this country or that country, but at this independence, and the kids, the teens, and everybody for that matter, as long as the independence is managed properly, they are going to be successful. So how it can be managed successfully? As long as you know what your goal, what your destiny is. And for all of us, for all the sadhakas, our intent is to stay connected, stay in Krishna consciousness, stay focused, so that this independence which is given to us will make us realize, should make us realize that we are permanently dependent on the Supreme, and that Supreme Personality of Godhead has a name, and his name is Krishna. And so that we can depend on Krishna. As long as we're dependent on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we know that somebody is taking care of us, somebody is giving us protection. We shouldn't be worried about. We should just do our duty and not wait for the results. And that is where we channelize our activity. So I can go on and on. Beautiful verse to ponder. One of the most popular verses quoted by a lot of devotees and our seniors. But if you have understood this verse, indulge in things which will make you dependent on Krishna, wherein you hear about Krishna, you work for Krishna, you do devotional service to Krishna, and you establish that independence which is given to us by being dependent on the Supreme, so that when the dependence is strong, whenever the husband and wife or kids and parents, they are very closely dependent on each other, there is no breakage. Whenever the independence is misused and they go in their own ways, then the home breaks. So Krishna is just echoing that here. Beautiful verse. I hope it has put a mark on you, so that we recognize the importance of this verse. So, like to open up for any questions, comments, corrections, and additions, because this is Bhakti Vriksha, and more we discuss detailed topics which you can't do on a Sunday evening with hundreds and 200s people in the temple, but this is a close-knit family, and if we can discuss and give your views, sometimes some of you open up and give some wonderful thoughts. So please open up and share your question, comments, reflections, additions. Hare Krishna. If you can unmute and speak, we would like to hear from you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
All Krishna.
Wish all the devotees a happy new year, Prabhuji, because I'm
New
meeting this time the devotees after the new year.
Happy New Year, Prabhu.
Thank you. Prabhuji, very beautiful. You have explained all the dimensions of this verse. Thank you very much, Prabhuji, for the point which I want to reinforce. As you have told, we need reinforcements, right, Prabhuji, for the so that the leaf won't fall off the tree, basically, right? So what I want to mention here is, Prabhuji, along with your points, that mind is basically here. I interpreted that mind here is referring to the soul, Prabhuji, as you have explained, right? But how is the soul directed? Like soul is like the engine, Prabhuji, but we have to give the direction to it, and the direction is given by the intelligence, Prabhuji. So here here Lord Krishna is trying to inculcate that intelligence into us by giving this that you have to be these Shashendriyani, right? That your perfect storm or your perfect recipe for disaster are these Shashendriyani. So how, as you have explained, Prabhuji, we have to channelize these in the direction towards Krishna, or apart from Krishna, what you told, that means as Maya is always very powerful, Prabhuji, at this stratosphere, right? Maya is not that powerful at the above layers, where we have not, means we must have experienced, or we don't know that part, but definitely we know that here Maya is much more powerful than your bhakti. It can snatch away the bhakti also, Prabhuji. But what guides us is our intelligence, Prabhuji. And where do we get this intelligence from? The intelligence comes from this Sangha, Prabhuji, association. And as you have rightly told, mentor means like a guru who basically gives us the intelligence. He otherwise we all are conditioned. Krishna clearly mentions in this verse, Prabhuji, that we are all conditioned. Since we are conditioned, we have taken birth here. So, and that conditioning makes us misuse of our independence. That conditioning tries to make use of allurement, which is nothing but allurement. So what I wanted to conclude here is that we should use our intelligence so the mind is merged into the super soul or the Lord Krishna, and automatically what happens, Prabhuji, is the conclusion is, if the mind through our intelligence, if our mind is merged into the super soul or Lord Krishna in terms, let's not talk technical terms, Prabhuji, super soul. If we say that if the mind is merged into Lord Krishna, then automatically we'll experience the bliss, we'll get the knowledge, and eternity, Prabhuji, eternity is always there, as Krishna has explained, the soul is eternal. We will recognize that eternity. Eternity doesn't come or go. Eternity is eternity, but that is we understand by the intelligence. And And mainly thing what happens, which I wanted to, another point which I want to tell is that when our mind becomes through our intelligence, it becomes attached to Krishna. He sees us, we don't see them. Otherwise, when we go to the temple, we see the deity, but is Krishna seeing us or not? We don't know. The only way we will know is through our knowledge and the bliss which we are getting, right? If we are getting our knowledge and bliss, we are seeing the deities of Jagannath or Radha Shamsundar or Gaur Nitai, and you feel pleasant when you go there. You are distracted, all your what anxieties are not coming into the picture, then that means he's seeing us. Otherwise, we are not seeing, we are only seeing Lord Krishna. So what happens is that when we use this conditional intelligence, then he sees us, Prabhu, and then we attain peace. That's all we all are looking for. That's the point which I want to tell, that how we can use the mind, what drives the mind. In scientific terms, I didn't want to it is called the vectorization. The intelligence gives the vectorization of the soul, basically. It gives us a direction. Krishna, I think in 15 somewhere, some verse, he also tells that he yantra rudani, we all are machines, the body is a machine, and that machine gets the direction based on our intelligence, and that intelligence will be guided by Krishna if we follow this Shastendriyani principle. How to do.
So,
Thank you.
thank you, Prabhu. Prabhu, you spoke about intelligence. Intelligence is the next segue. The mind, if it is not controlled by the right intelligence and the right knowledge, it can drive us in the wrong direction. And also, you mentioned about when we are seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the temple, by constantly doing devotional service, our ahankar, our ego is crushed. Soon you end up cleaning the dishes in the temple. As we end up doing that, we realize that the sponge, if our heart is a sponge, if the sponge is filled with water, it can't take any more water. So we have to get rid of this water so that whenever there is nectar, the sponge can take it. Likewise, we have to get rid of this ahankar such that when you are ready to receive the mercy in the temple with Jagannath, Baldev, Subhadra, Gaur Nitai, and Radha, Sri Sri Radha Sundar, we can see the personality of Godhead in them. We don't see a wood or we don't see a colorful marble. We see the Supreme Personality of Godhead manifesting. It's the same wood and marble, but a Krishna conscious person sees with karuna, without any ahankar, and then you realize that you are seeing Krishna and Krishna is seeing you. Otherwise, this becomes mechanical. So you talked about two things: how to sort of grow that intelligence so that the mind is focused by doing more devotional service, and that can only happen if we get the anarthas like ahankar out of. We don't go with a tag of I am the CEO of a company or a CFO of a company. You go as a servitor of the Supreme, and then the Lord will see you and you will see the Lord. Otherwise, we'll end up seeing. So that's why many temples which are not Krishna conscious, they say we have the idol of this. Actually, they are not idols. They are the Archa Vigrahas. So thanks for your share, Prabhuji. Any other comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, Prabhuji. When you say depend on Krishna, do you mean surrender yourself to Krishna and then depend on Krishna?
Yeah. So thanks for your question, Mataji. So surrender is a goal which is probably going to be the one of the verses in 18th chapter where Krishna finally says surrender. So the surrendering is a process, Mataji. It doesn't happen. So Krishna is prepping us, giving us all the knowledge, giving us all the techniques, giving us all the science behind how the inner workings of these aspects, the senses, the sixth sense, and so on. So the goal is definitely surrender. If you're able to surrender with a very clear heart, with a clear consciousness, then it is good. But often in this material world, with a egoistic world, with a rat race going around in the job and this, it's very difficult actually. So that's the reason why there is so much a fight in families. The husband and wife are fighting, the kids are fighting, and then you're now hearing a fight going on between countries. It's all because of that, because nobody wants to surrender. And that's the end game actually. That's the end aspect, and it may take us more and more discussion to get us there, but it doesn't happen. It's very easy to say surrender, but actually it doesn't happen. So these are the techniques which Krishna is focusing on in telling us that eventually he's going to say in the 18th chapter about surrender, but without understanding the techniques, surrender is just another word. And when we are ready for surrender, we have all these emanations, such as how does mind work, how does the senses work, and why does mentorship is important, and what should be the attitude, why we should do bhakti, should we do devotional service. So there are many aspects built into that, and once we understand all the aspects, our surrendering process will be sublime. Otherwise, with little knowledge is dangerous. We will surrender then to realize that, hey, I don't have any money, let me go grab some money. So that failure to surrender properly is going to happen. So this is a total understanding. Does that answer your question, Mataji?
Yeah, yes, Prabhuji, thank you. I mean, it's a end goal. To say.
Right.
All this process leads us to that, right?
Right.
Prabhu,
Yeah,
one more point I'd like to
Go ahead, Lord.
to Priyanka Mataji's question. Surrender, we are surrendering, Prabhuji. We are surrendering either to Maya or to Krishna. So there is a surrender always. Either we surrender, like for example, if we want to get up, do we surrender to lethargy or laziness, or do we surrender to get up and do what we need to do? So surrender is always there, but which direction? What is the orientation of that surrender? That's what I call, Prabhuji, the vectorization, what we are calling direction. So Krishna is telling here to surrender, Prabhuji. To surrender, that surrender in the which direction we have to surrender is what being mentioned. We are surrendered to either Maya or Krishna.
Right.
So if we are already surrendered to Maya, then he's asking, okay, make a shift.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. So Prabhu, so as I mentioned at the beginning of the class, we are going to be serving somebody, our family, or jobs, our boss, or whatever. So that is bound to be there. But while we pick that route, there are consequences, and that is also surrender. We are actually surrendering to our wives when we're buying the grocery, uh, and so on. So we have a choice now. Now with this knowledge, we have a choice where to surrender properly. Surrender to the illusory energy of the Lord or the eternal energy of the Lord. Okay, thank you. Nice discussion.
Hare
Any
Krishna,
other
Prabhuji.
comments? Yes, Niranjan Prabhu. Dandavat Pranam.
Dandavat Pranam. Nice, Prabhuji. A lot of good examples. I really like the tree and leaf example that you've given. And coming to the verse, right? So, Prabhuji, like in the verse, like as it is mentioned that we are the fragmental part of the Lord, right? But also it is mentioned that the soul, like in if you read the purpose, right, it's mentioned that the soul cannot be cut into pieces, like, right. So how can I understand that part, like how we link to the our supreme, like, because we are part and parcel, right, to the supreme Lord. It means supreme Lord cannot be cut into, like, we are not like we are not coming from the supreme Lord directly, right, Prabhuji, like we are not like cut into pieces, right? How we like link to the Supreme Lord, Prabhuji? So that part I'm not able to.
Yes. So as Srila Prabhupada is quoting from various different Puranas, see, we have to understand that once we go back to Godhead, to Golok Vrindavan, we are going to look very much alike the other people who are there in Golok Vrindavan. So as you can see in this purport, we are actually part and parcel of the Supreme, but we have independence, and the soul cannot be broken. So here, here is saying the soul, you cannot break the soul, you cannot cut the soul, and 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 uh, and 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 we are part of the whole, which is eternal. So once we are liberated, right? Once we do pious credits and we have a sense of service, we are liberated from this bodily entanglement. Our outer covering, our outer covering is gone. This covering of ahankar, the man buddhi ahankar, it's gone. So then we are back to, we're totally spiritualized. Once the impurities are gone, we're totally spiritualized. So when Dhruva Maharaj, for example, he was in this material world, but when he went back to Godhead, the the flying viman, aeroplane came and took him, and when he went back, he was seated alongside others who were exactly like him. So the way we should understand this is, forget about um, the look and feel of how we are, but what Srila Prabhupada is saying is, once the impurities are gone and we are liberated, we become very much like the Supreme Personality of Godhead in Golok Vrindavan. That should not be misconstrued, and a lot of Mayavadis always ends up saying that in that situation we are God, and we are not. We are the servant of the servant of the servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the way we should understand that is, now we are qualitatively same. God likes to eat, we like to eat. God likes to rest, God likes to have friends, but we are quantitatively infinitesimal, and that is where Lord is everything. But once we get rid of all this, the impurities and everything, and this process of us living in this world is an examination process. So we're going through this. We live for 60 years, 70 years, 80 years, and we make us go through the process of purification. This job, what we have in this material world, we should use that as an investment to go back to Godhead. And when we go back to Godhead, we are like one, and looks same as the Supreme Personality of Godhead in Golok Vrindavan. So we have Golok Vrindavan, where the Lord lives in the spiritual sky, and the when we are ready, we become spiritualized, and we we are one and the same with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but we are not God there also. So I don't know if I answered your question, but anybody else would like to add anything which might help? Niranjan Prabhu, please go ahead.
Prabhuji, I like to same direction what you have been explaining. Niranjan Prabhu, here the part and parcel is, as Prabhuji has told, it is the magnitude, Prabhuji. It is the magnitude which is the part and parcel. That means we are qualitatively the same. That means we are Satchidananda souls and we are eternal, Prabhuji. But since because of the conditioning we have fallen here, but what here I think if I understand your question, the magnitude is what means this verse or whatever whichever verse you are referring, Prabhuji, that is just referring to the magnitude, that qualitatively we are same, but quantitatively we are very, very minute compared to Krishna. And another aspect which I want to tell you is that, Prabhuji, and it is written in scriptures and explained by Acharyas, Prabhuji. Lord is infinite, Prabhuji. So if you take a particle out of that, it will not become partial. Like in material world, what we see, if we take a fragment out of a mass, right, it becomes lesser. But one characteristic of Lord is that, Prabhuji, which is explained in Acharya, is that he's never, so if a particle falls off, he doesn't means become less or different. He remains the same. For example, when Brahmaji tried to take away the cowherd boys and the cows, he reproduced them and he kept the same magnitude. If I understood the question behind the intent behind your question, I wanted to point out this, Prabhuji, that he doesn't change. Only the magnitude is the difference. That's why he says we are fragmental part and parcels. And the fragmental part and parcels, the question is that he never changes it doesn't change any of his thing, Prabhuji. For example, Prabhuji, I'm a little physics oriented, Prabhuji. That's why I give those examples. You know, when we are trying to derive a convexity or the concavity of a curve, well, what is our basic assumption, Prabhuji, that when light hits on a convex or a concave surface, we don't treat that as a curvature, we treat that as a straight line of the big circle. That point where the light hits is treated as a straight line, and angle of incidence is equal to angle of reflection. So why I'm mentioning this example is that, Prabhuji, so we are like that, Prabhuji. We are just that point in that big circle, in that big curvature. We are just that point, Prabhuji. That is what Krishna is trying to explain. That's how at least I understood, Prabhuji, and I wanted to add to what Him Jagannath Prabhu has explained.
Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Does that answer your question? One more thing I want to add, it's a great question, is Prabhu, when you boil rice, right, it has millions of particles or thousands of particles. In order to test whether the rice is boiled or not, you just take one, either you eat it or you just taste it. Just by tasting that, you know that the entire rice is good, right? So here, Prabhupada is saying that if you take a stone of gold and use a portion of that for your ornament, it is still gold, right? So qualitatively, it is same, exactly like the particles of rice. So when we transmigrate, we become very much like that. Okay?
Yes, Prabhuji, thank you so much. Yeah. So my only point is that because in 2.4 also it is mentioned that the soul cannot be cut into pieces. If I understood in this way, right? Let's say Krishna is an infinite soul, like we are, let's say, very very a small kind of particle kind of light.
Hmm.
But my only point is that then if the soul cannot be broken, right, then how, like, from that infinite soul, how we came? So this small particle, how it, so that's why I want.
Yeah, so Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as Kiradukshaya Vishnu, has expanded himself as Paramatma in our souls. So that means he is like the infinite collection of all the Jivatmas, and from him he is in our heart, he is in your heart, he's in everybody's heart. And so when that's the reason why when we all leave our body, we transmigrate based on our prarabdha karma. We take up another body, and that soul transmigrate. There might be some time gap and this that, but as Kiradakshaya Vishnu, based on the scriptures, as Kiradakshaya Vishnu, he is in all the jivas' hearts as Paramatma, and he's seeing us exactly like that bird in the tree, which is looking at the bird which is eating the fruits of the tree. So we have the soul where we're eating the fruits of the tree, and as Paramatma, Krishna is watching us. So that's how I think we should understand it.
Prabhuji, one more. I don't know. I'll try to throw this example, Prabhuji, but let me know. Prabhuji, you know about surface tension on the very liquid surface, right, Prabhuji? So why there is a capillarity action and a surface tension on the layer only? That's how I think we can interpret, Prabhuji. I also don't know, because Prabhupada also in his explanation says somehow or other we have fallen into the material world. How that somehow we have to get the realization, Prabhuji, that as I always tell, that Krishna has left some ambiguity in his explanations, which we have to work hard, basically through sadhana. We have to realize those things, Prabhuji. So we fell apart because we were trying to be independent of the Krishna. Now, will he change if we fall apart? No, Prabhuji. He still remains the same 100%. Which is we are the fragmental parts. We get like chipped off from that surface. That's why I gave the surface tension example, Prabhuji. We get chipped off because we have what happens, Prabhuji? We have some other force or inclination that not to get attached to the surface of that sphere. Say, for example, I'm talking in terms of material objects, Prabhuji. That sphere particle, we are somewhere on the surface and we want to detach ourselves. For what reason and why? That I think, at least I don't know the answer for that, Prabhuji, but yes, we'll go with the knowledge given in the scriptures, because they are the directions that we did fall into the material and we are suffering, and to get out. And we know that we are fragment. The fragmental part is to tell that to change our false ego, Prabhuji. That's all the fragmental part. We have to make use of that knowledge that we should not have a false ego.
Yeah. So we have actually misused our independence, and that's why we are here where you are here.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhu. Good discussion. Any other comments, questions? All right. Yeah. Yes, Prabhu. Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Small comment from my own life. I could relate to. I used to waste a lot of hours playing video games. I have spent more than 3,000 playing games. And after marriage, after getting enough scoldings, I was able to realize that I was just wasting my time.
Yeah. Hare Krishna, Prabhu, I think you're giving good points. Can you all hear Prabhuji, or you're hearing
Sorry,
lower?
Yeah,
No, it's not audible, Prabhuji.
It's not audible, Prabhu. Can you please come again?
Sure. How about now, Prabhu?
Excellent. Now it's excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I had the habit of gaming. I've spent over 3,000, 4,000 hours playing games. It is something which I've done for many years, so it was very hard to break that habit. But after marriage, after getting enough scoldings, I was able to sort of come to the realization eventually that I'm just wasting my hours doing something which is not going to help me in my life. So I could relate to that even with my Krishna conscious journey, that sometimes it's not it's very hard to take that decision yourself, and association helps a lot. So even if you're not able to get on the right path with your own willpower, sometimes you need people around you to show you the way. So that's how I could, with this verse, like I could relate a lot with my own personal experience. So thank you for that.
Excellent, Prabhu. Excellent. So this is a perfect example where Prabhuji was, in a way, he had the independence. He could have read, he could have written, he could have done something, but he chose to spend 3,000-4,000 hours in video games, and he was passing through that. And then he met his spouse, and then the work in the family prompted the association to choose the independence properly. Then you cut down on video games and you moved on to do more this thing. So so this is exactly a practical reflection of this verse, in the sense that we have this independence which is given to us by Krishna, but by falling prey to bad eating habits, getting a lot of attraction for food of passion or food of ignorance, ignorant food. Passion, Krishna in the 17th chapter talks about what are the food in goodness and all. We'll get there. But essentially, what Prabhuji is reflecting is seeing the correlation and how he can use this verse to better his life. That's exactly so. Krishna consciousness and Bhagavad Gita is a practical manual. How we take this, and Srila Prabhupada has taken it to a wonderful level. That's why this is the largest selling Bhagavad Gita in the whole world, and we're so proud to follow it. So, so as Prabhuji could relate the practicality of this verse, if you all can relate and tweak your life by having a better eating habit, by better association habit, by having that ruchi to hear Krishna Katha or doing devotional service, you'll yourself will realize that you are the happiest person in the world. And that is just a testament of this association. More we associate, more we get better mentors who are not perfect once upon a time, but over a period of time has worked on perfecting it. Nobody is going to be perfect also, but still with the association we can transform. Thank you so much for relating it.
Prabhuji, what Rohit Prabhu told is a classic. I think he's trying to explain practically, though we talked of physics. And Prabhuji, this is nothing but the cohesiveness, right? He's trying to be cohesive to the family rather than to be away from the family. He could have played hours of the video games again, but he tried to stay. That's where the independence. That's how I think we also fell off from the force of the Krishna, that we wanted to do something independently. But if we stay within that cohesive force, then we would have stick to that place.
Right.
That's the closest I could think of, Prabhuji.
Absolutely, absolutely. As long as these verses help yourself in your job life, family life, your spiritual life, and take inspiration, you just have nailed it. So please use it, apply it. Bhagavad Gita is an application, it's a science. And so don't misuse the independence, as Rohit Prabhu and Bhakti Ratnakar Prabhu echoed, and serve, and that's where the three things we covered today are so important. we have to recognize that we have to recognize our identity. That's number one. We have to channelize our activity, which is service. And then if you do that, then we spiritualize our destiny. So as long as we these three things we remember, it's going to be wonderful. That means we have understood the tenet of Bhagavad Gita's 15.7. Excellent discussion, Prabhu. Anything else? So if there is none, we can end here. Yesterday was the Pushya Abhishek of Sri Radha and Krishna in this time, time of Pushya month, the month of Pushya, winter month. Lordships are adorned with Abhishek of flower petals, because also in this time in India, the flower is plentifully available. And so it's actually Pushya Abhishek, with coinciding with the season Pushya. And also we do, yesterday was the actual day. So you might have seen Pushpa Abhishek in various different temples. Makar Sankranti is coming up, and the next important festival will be, we will share the flyers. So please indulge in channelizing your activity in the right direction, as Krishna is saying here, so that we don't misuse our independence. We stay focused on our destiny, which is to go back to Godhead. So thank you so much, and our prayers at your lotus feet for joining and engaging the conversation. We can only learn by conversation. So let's all pray in the lotus feet of all Vaishnavas by chanting Vancha kalpa taruvesha kripa sindhu vaevacha patitanam pavanevyo vaishnavyo namo namo Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Shila Prabhupada ki jai, Bhagavad Gita.
Jagannath Prabhu ki jai.
Jai.
Krishna.